Here's the gist of Doom Eternal. This is a classic-style first-person shooter developed by id Software and published by Bethesda. It released in March 2020 for PC, PS4, and Xbox One with a Switch version on the way. Now, if you're at all familiar with the history of computer shooters, you've likely heard of either the classic 90s Doom series, which all but entirely set the stage for first-person shooters as a genre, or the more recent Doom reboot commonly referred to as Doom 2016. Doom Eternal is a direct sequel to Doom 2016, maintaining the modernizations and gameplay additions added back in 2016, featuring an all-new story. Not that it's much of anything noteworthy, mind you. While Doom has always had the makings of a story, humans mine their way into hell for fuel, demons attack, Earth is invaded, so on and so forth, something cult, it simply served as an excuse for giving you monsters to slay. There are lore books and cutscenes to dictate the plot to you, but are designed to be skippable for those simply looking for some mindless fun, a massive improvement to the slow, forced cutscenes of Doom 2016. So with the pretense out of the way, let's discuss the true draw to the Doom franchise, the gameplay. Fast-paced Marathon Man sprinting and shooting, swaths of weapons and demons flooding decrepit levels full of hidden secrets and power-ups. The game controls as simply as ever for a first-person shooter, running, jumping, weirdly no crouching, and simple shooting with no aim-down sights. No need, because your weapons are pinpoint accurate no matter how fast you're going, relatively speaking. A shotgun is still a shotgun after all. Throughout the course of the game, you'll unlock a plethora of weaponry, shotguns and assault rifles, rocket launchers, and the famous BFG, all with their own ammo pools, their own playstyles, and most importantly, for the most part, all still being important no matter how far through the game you are. All the weapons can still hold their own as the title progresses. Getting the super shotgun doesn't nullify the combat shotgun's usefulness, for instance. Thankfully, Eternal gets the absolute most important thing completely right. The combat is satisfying. The simple act of running and gunning feels impactful, crunchy, and powerful. My favorite thing about this genre of old-school style shooter is how enemy attacks are, for the most part, if not entirely, melee or projectile-based, as opposed to hit-scan bullets. This means you can bob and weave your way around foes and their attacks, giving the fast-paced movement purpose. Running circles around demons and slicing and dicing your way through them using a massive arsenal of weaponry is the core draw of a game like Doom, and Eternal delivers on that better than any title has before when looked at in isolation. However, this is where my problems with the title start. The best parts of this game are bogged down by a slew of needless mechanics, which would be welcome additions if they had any synergy with one another. Let me explain. The main combat gimmick of 2016 makes a return in Eternal. When enemies are low on HP, they'll glow a distinct blue, and striking them with a melee attack in this state will trigger a glory kill, using the environments around you or aspects of the enemies themselves to finish them off once and for all, and earning health packs as a reward. One of my biggest complaints about Doom 2016 was the necessity and lack of variety in these glory kill animations, which I'm sad to say remains an issue in Eternal. While there are definitely more, and they're thankfully swift, glory kills lack a level of absurdity or differences between one another which would make the mechanic more satisfying. Overall, it feels more like it slows the pace of the entire game down, making enemies take even longer to kill. Of course, one can simply ignore this mechanic altogether by using more ammo to take down foes at a distance. However, new to Eternal, ammo supplies seem oddly limited. The idea behind this is the chainsaw, unlocked right at the start of the game, is a backup weapon giving you a guaranteed glory kill on all but the biggest of foes, provided you have enough fuel. Kills with this weapon will drop stocks of ammo, letting you get back into the fray proper. In practice, however, I simply find myself low on ammo constantly, with a nagging reminder on the HUD at that, and instead of the chainsaw serving as a recharge, it becomes a complete necessity to avoid running dry. Therefore, if you find yourself empty on chainsaw fuel, which slowly recharges to just enough to kill basic demons, and no ammo to spare, you're pretty much screwed. Melee attacks don't even deal any damage whatsoever unless they're charged up blood punches. This wasn't a situation I often found myself in, but I would get close more often than I'd like. An interesting factor to consider in all of this is that certain weapons are designed for specific targets, namely the plasma rifle can overcharge and destroy enemies with shields, and is a requirement to defeat some bigger foes. So when attempting to conserve ammo, it's best to keep tabs on not just how much ammo you have, but what kind as well. If you're wondering, by the way, I played the campaign on normal difficulty as I found Doom Eternal to be exponentially more challenging than 2016. Nightmare difficulty would simply have been aggravating for me, but it's there for those who are really looking to kick themselves. In response to the difficulty increase, an extra lives mechanic has been introduced. 1-ups hidden in levels will restore your health to maximum and offer brief invulnerability upon what would otherwise be your death. While we're on the topic of mechanical introductions, Doom Eternal has a plethora of new mechanics other than those retained from 2016. Maintained are weapon upgrades for alt-fire modes available on most firearms, suit upgrading increasing your health, armor, and ammo capacity, and runes which give small bonuses such as more air control or faster glory kills. And introduced for the first time is the grenade launcher, which can throw normal or ice grenades, the flamethrower, which fires a small burst igniting enemies and making them drop armor packs upon taking damage, the blood punch, which is a powerful melee attack that charges from glory kills, the wall climb, allowing you to cling to netted surfaces, the dash, which lets you boost twice in the air, crystals, which increase sub-weapon functionality, goop that stops you from jumping, a grappling hook, shotgun, enemy weak points to disarm them, monkey bars to swing from. Okay, that's a lot. A ton of new mechanics added to what's an otherwise fairly simple game. Of course, rambling them all off like that to you all at once makes it out to be more confusing than it actually is. These concepts are instead sprinkled in as you play, introduced with frankly intrusive tutorials. Yeah, no, I figured that, game. I actually figured that. You didn't have to let me know, but I did figure that by the fact that this looks like a... Okay, maybe I do need the tutorials. These can thankfully be toggled off, but you'll assuredly need them for your first run, as Doom Eternal has countless new ideas it wishes to explore. I say wishes because I'd be lying if I said they were successfully explored. All of these new mechanics feel extremely tacked on, half-baked. The 3D platforming revolving around dashing and wall climbing is interesting, but very bare bones. The chainsaw, grenade launcher, blood punches, and flamethrower all feel like barely expounded upon side grades, all fighting to make room for one another. I barely remember to use them since they're all bound to different keys, and I've already got an arsenal of shotguns, assault rifles, rocket launchers, and more to choose from. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for varying up what is otherwise a very simple gameplay loop. At its base level, you're expected to shoot enemies until you can glory kill them and use the chainsaw to load back up on ammo and start again. And that's satisfying on its own, and aside from ammo limitations, is effectively what Doom 2016 got so right. However, all these gimmicks tacked on feel like more just for the sake of more, rather than actually being fun. I would much rather a handful of creative ideas be explored to their full potential rather than a helping of small, easily forgotten additions. For instance, a hub map dubbed the Doom Fortress is visited between levels and includes unlockables using batteries found strewn throughout the game and a training room to practice combat with no risk. However, at the end of the day, it's effectively a gigantic main menu with story beats spread about it for little reason other than to take up more time. It's a giant, empty, gray castle with no heart or soul to it. Visual blah. That's a point worth mentioning, the level design. Now, don't get me wrong, on a surface level, the maps are well thought out. No more pointlessly complex labyrinths from the days of old. The cities and citadels of Doom Eternal serve as suitable battlegrounds for combat. And these maps are long, plenty of time to get lots of fights in, stopping just shy of where I'd start to get weary of the same environments. With plenty of secrets tucked away behind breakable walls and locked doors requiring keys to access. That may well be my favorite part of Doom Eternal, hunting for secrets. High-intensity challenge rooms, unlockable cheat codes, power-ups, and cosmetics lie hidden within the tiny, oft-forgot corners of the game's maps. Noticing something awry, a wall out of place, or a platform that seems just within reach and figuring out how to get there and claim your prize is satisfying indeed. 2016 had its secrets here and there, but Eternal went all in on the concept, and I'm completely here for it. However, the level design falters in what area is not playable. Doom 2016 had this fun problem of letting players easily worm their way into nooks and crannies and find themselves falling out of the map. To counteract that, for Eternal, they simply placed invisible walls and kill triggers on everything they don't want you touching. Even if it's seemingly harmless or otherwise easily accessible, if the game doesn't intend for you to go that way, you're forcefully stopped from doing so. And with so much 3D platforming over bottomless abysses, it can often prove difficult to figure out which way the game intends for you to progress, meaning you'll likely be greeted with a massive stopgap out of nowhere if you're not careful. It's very distracting, and beyond that, takes a lot of the fun out of hunting for secrets. Even within the intended bounds, however, new features can prove irritating. This horrid purple goo, for instance, slows your movement to a crawl and stops you from jumping. In the early levels, it's kept to small pools as a sort of punishment for failing to platform, but later on they just cover entire fields with it for seemingly no reason other than artificial difficulty. It's like a reverse ice level, and it wouldn't be so bad if the new dash feature gave you anything more than a microscopic jolt through the sludge. See what I'm talking about with features not quite synergizing with one another? The same goes for combat. All of these new mechanics, and the most they interact with enemies beyond simple damage dealing is cacodemons, the flying meatball things, who will swallow grenades shot into their mouth. No fun interactions with freezing enemies and then using the flamethrower on them, nothing. Oh, and speaking of invisible walls, upon entering certain combat areas, the game will throw up walls which will only drop once all the demons are dead. 2016 got away with this by using locked doors that only opened upon lowering demonic presence, but in this game, it's simply unexplained walls. Not that it matters too much, I was already gonna rip and tear and all that. Unless these walls spawn on top of you and box you in, it's just a bit ugly is all. Actually, while on the subject, I'm not too keen on Doom Eternal's aesthetic overall. Graphically, the game is fine. It looks like it was released recently, but aesthetically, it's so dull, boring, uninspired hellscapes. I mean, I know you can only do so much with fire and brimstone, but at the same time, the Mars landscapes of 2016 offered a more appealing view than the desolate wastelands of Eternal. The scale of specific spectacle only carries the title so far when the art style is so washed out. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Now, don't get me wrong, just because I'm spending so much time talking about my problems with Doom Eternal doesn't mean I overall hate it. It's just that what I like about it, the combat, secrets, and fast-paced demon hunting action, takes barely any time to discuss at all, while my issues require further explanation. For example, the enemy variety. There's a wide selection of demons to face off against, ranging from mindless mooks to great big hunks of meat, armed to the teeth of which they have ample supply. Almost entirely new to Eternal are enemy weak points. These rocket launcher foes, for instance, can be disarmed by specifically targeting their guns. At first, I thought this mechanic might get tiresome quick, seeing as precision aiming isn't exactly the name of the game in Doom titles. However, the more I played it, the more I grew fond of this mechanic, finding which weapons worked best against what weak points. It's important to note that weak points are by no means a necessary feature to partake in. You can simply unload everything you've got directly into an enemy's face and they'll eventually fall. Except for the Marauders, the absolute most infuriating enemy type Eternal introduced. At close range, they're invincible. At long range, they're invincible. At medium range, they're invincible, except for the small window of opportunity presented just before their attack, cued by their eyes glowing green. The fidgety game of red light, green light you have to play with these guys is far too monotonous for the fast-paced rip and tear fest Doom usually is. Other enemies use this mechanic to great effect, but the gameplay just slows to a crawl anytime Marauders show up. Although, speaking of slowing to a crawl, let's talk performance. Of course, this is mostly to do with the PC version. From a technical standpoint, while I've had no performance issues in the game as of yet on high settings, I do have to chastise the removal of an OpenGL rendering option. The game only runs on Vulkan, which makes recording it a bit tricky and presents compatibility issues for those on older hardware. Doom 2016 let you switch renderers, so it seems a bit of a weird decision to forgo this going forward. Oh, and not to mention the glitches. Bethesda's fingerprints are all over this one. Now, to their credit, the devs published a list of known issues prior to launch, things that were caught after the game went gold. I understand that, and they're liable to be fixed, but knowing that the game is buggy doesn't make getting stuck in a wall and having to load a checkpoint any less infuriating. Let's step off the campaign for a second to talk about online. I gotta be honest, Doom multiplayer has never really been the draw for me personally. Obviously, back in the day, Doom LAN parties were all the rage, but nowadays I have far better multiplayer games which are designed with online in mind first. And Eternal's online feels very, well, like many features, tacked on. The asymmetrical Slayer vs. Demons mode would be a fun time killer with friends, but really all I was thinking the whole time was, dang, I wish I was playing Quake right now. In fact, my overall experience with Doom Eternal makes me wish I was playing something a little more focused. Again, I cannot stress this enough. The core combat experience is without question as action-packed and satisfying as you could ask for, but layered on top of the root of what makes Doom so fun is a mountain of unnecessary gimmicks. If you liked Doom 2016, you will for sure get enjoyment out of Eternal, I can promise you that. Hell, you'll probably even like it more, provided the difficulty increase doesn't turn you off. But if you're like me, you'll enjoy it in spite of its countless failings. For every room full of monsters and ammo for you to bounce around, bob and weave, and shoot the shit, there's a corridor of sludge slowing down the fun. For every creative boss encounter, there's a mob with artificially increased difficulty who will grind the game to a halt. For every new weapon with unique upgrades to try, there's a mountain of other bare-bones mechanics which take the place of those upgrades being explored to their full potential. Again, I don't hate this game. I don't love it either. It's just fine, serviceable, does its job if you're looking for a game like Doom 2016 with more content. However, Doom Eternal is a game held back by its desire to be more rather than better, and hard to recommend for $60. If you're a fan of classic PC shooters and want a modern take on the genre, play Doom 2016. You can get it for cheap nowadays. And if you enjoyed that title and are looking for more, Doom Eternal offers some high-tier combat and decent enough levels if you can get it half off. Otherwise, you can put Doom off eternally. Thanks for watching, and take it easy.